Want to talk about super cool real estate dystopia?
Yeah.
All right. This is a great article that I read on The Atlantic earlier this week. Just a few months after reports emerged that modern cars were sharing information with auto insurers, a California woman had her home insurance canceled because of drone footage. Is this two different? Oh, okay. This is two different things. This is not the Atlantic article. So first is one from Petapixel. Joan Van Kuren's insurance provider of 40 years, CSAA, dropped her home insurance, citing unacceptable hazards and liability exposure. Van Kuren was told by a representative that they flew a drone over her house and concluded that the final phase of her home renovation project was hazardous clutter. Now, we've talked about this before because this has happened to someone else. But what's interesting about this one to me is that her insurance provider, CSAA, is saying, hey, we didn't violate your privacy. We don't have drones.
We just paid someone who did.
We used several sources of information to assess the condition of the property, which could include aerial imagery captured by third-party fixed-wing aircraft and satellites.
Sick.
And this is going to be a tenuous connection, but this kind of reminds me of the Disney... The Disney case earlier, where it's like, look, if you're going to have your brand name on it, if you're going to have it as part of your business practice, at the end of the day, if you're Amazon and you're going, oh, well, those mistreated truck drivers or whatever they are, they don't work for Amazon.
Isn't there some amount of precedent for this?
They're contractors. I mean, that's why companies contract, so that they're not responsible for the workers' conditions. So that if something goes wrong, they're not liable. They can cut ties and just walk away.
Or maybe because they really want to work with that person, but that person's in another country, and then that's the only way that it can work. We like our contractors, hello. Or because they live in Quebec, and Quebec...
It's complicated.
Oof. Quebec's a whole heck of a thing.
But I'm not talking about hiring a contractor here.
I know.
I'm talking about taking an entire division of your business or an entire role within your company.
Contracting it to another company.
And contracting it to another company who then can treat those people however. And theoretically, there's this layer of insulation between your brand and your company and what they're doing. And it's like, I don't why we allow that insulation to exist. If your contractor is using aerial footage why are we getting into this conversation about who the drone belongs to? Who cares?
Yeah.
You are using drone footage that was collected, which is technically legal, I guess, but you're using drone footage to surveil someone's private property and determine if they should be eligible for insurance or not. It's freaking dystopian. That's the issue. Although it's not nearly as dystopian as this next one. And look, I am not a lawyer. I'm not a legal advisor. So take everything that I'm about to say for the ignorant rants of a layperson that they are. But this one really upset me. This one's from The Atlantic here, the original article. You should go read it. It's really good. It's going to break it down more than what we're talking about. But in other unfortunate real estate news, 30 to 60% of multifamily building units in 40 housing markets are apparently using property management software from the company RealPage to adjust rent prices. Okay. So far, I guess, right?
Sure.
But RealPage has been accused of antitrust violations and price fixing due to their AI revenue management algorithm. See, we're starting to get some twitches in the thing. Basically, property owners input their unit prices and vacancy rates, and then the algorithm spits out a rent recommendation based on what competitors are charging. The lawsuits, actually multiple lawsuits, against RealPage, and there are lawsuits against similar services, allege that the landlords actually encourage their competitors to also use the service. Why? Because if they're all using it, then everyone will get better results. And they can collude without talking to each other directly. And they can all work together to raise prices, let me use the correct term here. AI manage their revenue. This is flipping wild. And the reason that I wanted to talk about this is because the tech bro cabal, the tech elite, whatever you want to call them, the people who are out there doing interviews and making arguments about these AI agents or algorithms. And I don't really think it's fair to call an AI agent an algorithm. I actually don't really like that term, because to me, an algorithm is something that can be expressed as a function, whereas machine learning is not necessarily simply expressed as a function. You can express the desired outcome. You can express what the input was, but what you can't express is exactly how it achieved that necessarily, because it's going to depend on how many times it has adversarially reinforced itself in order to achieve that outcome. Like it's not a simple function, though.
That narrative is used by companies that want to.
Well, I'm getting to that.
They have no control. Okay.
I'm getting to that.
All right.
Here's my problem, is the people that are getting out there and doing these interviews, making those arguments. I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's exactly where I was going with it. They've got to pick a fucking lane. Because on the one hand, right, they're kind of going, oh, blah, 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 blah.
We couldn't possibly know.
It's a black box.
Yeah.
It's a black box. We don't know how it works.
We just try to poke it and hope.
Yeah, we just hope for the best, right? And then when they want to train it, right? When they want to use, let's say, copyrighted or otherwise, not legally available content, like say from YouTube channels or Netflix or whoever else. Well, then now all of a sudden, it's. Oh, wait, this wasn't quite the argument I wanted to make. Whatever. Okay, let's back up a little bit. So when they want to train it, okay, the argument that they make is that it's kind of like a person, right? Like anyone, any entity could have consumed that content and learned, and everything that it produces from that point, whatever similarity it bears to what it learned from, is just like any person would, right? But then the legal argument around this price fixing issue.
Anytime it does something that they don't like,
it's not a person. It's just an algorithm.
Yeah. So
you got to decide which one it is.
Yeah.
Does it behave like a person taking in information from around it and then black box doing its own thing with it and it's generative? Or is it an algorithm and can't be held accountable for behaving like a person would? Because that's the argument that RealPage is making. They're basically saying that, well, because none of these people are talking to each other, there is no single entity that is bringing the entire thing together to become collusion. They're all just using an algorithm that is suggesting things to them based on information that it has. But the lawyers who are filing these lawsuits argue that it, like a person who was acting as an intermediary, has private information that it shouldn't have in order to give those recommendations. Sorry, it took me a while to get there, but basically,
we made it.
My whole thing is like, look, you've got to pick a lane.
Yeah.
You've got to decide if they're people and therefore should be allowed to intake any content they want like a person would, or if they're just algorithms, in which case, well, I guess you can't really do that to train them. They shouldn't be able to take in that information. Either way, it's pretty clear to me that what RealPage is doing is textbook collusion and price fixing.
Yeah.
It's just that the textbook was written a long fucking time ago.
Yeah, this is horrible. I'm really hate corporate residential investment. But that's a story for another time.
Yeah, and just again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the law, but what I do know is this doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's cool.
Yeah.